Logopraxis is designed to offer a structured approach to becoming more conscious of the operation of spiritual principles within the human mind. By engaging in reflective work, we can better align our external life with what enhances our inner or spiritual life. We do this through becoming more aware of the quality of the thoughts and feelings that we experience as our inner life, and by letting go of what resists truths being accepted and practiced. Logopraxis recognizes that what we say we believe isn't necessarily the same as the beliefs we live from. The beliefs we live from are most likely to be seen in how we actually respond to the conditions that we meet in our life. Until we are willing to observe our responses in the light of what truths teach, we are unlikely to see any contradictions between what we profess to believe and the beliefs that we live from. The Word provides us with this capacity for discernment and empowers us to welcome the life-enhancing perspectives it offers. Without this awareness, we remain asleep to any beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and responses that undermine the quality of our spiritual life. Logopraxis has been developed specifically to support its practitioners to enter into a first-hand experience of the transformative power of the Word working in their lives. The following video is a window into a live, online Logopraxis Life Group meeting. As you will see, a meeting typically consists of 3 rounds. In the first round, participants are invited to bring a summary of their experience of their work with the text for the session. In the second round, there is an opportunity for participants to reflect back on what they heard in the first round. Round 3 is a round in which participants can bring to the group anything else that they are carrying related to the reading for the session or the Logopraxis process more generally. Comments are made throughout the video to provide the viewer with insights into the principles, structures, and processes that give form to a typical Logopraxis meeting. A Logopraxis Life Group meeting begins with a short time of contemplation. Whatever the group decides to do in this space, it is done with the intention of providing an environment where the members can center themselves, steady the inner activity of their minds, and lift their awareness out of external life concerns. It is a reminder that as we approach the text as a group, we are approaching the Lord, and that in coming together, a space of worship is created within which holiness resides. The contemplative focus for this meeting opens with a guided meditation centered on the reading of a psalm. So the body's relaxed, and the mind is still and clear, and the heart is at peace, open to receiving the word of the Lord. O give thanks to the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the peoples. Sing to him, sing psalms to him, talk of all his wondrous works. And now just becoming aware of your breath once more. Taking in a few deep breaths and slowly releasing them. And with each breath, just becoming more aware of the sensation in your body, of your presence in the room, and of the presence of others here. And when you feel ready, I invite you to open your eyes to rejoin the group. So where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So round 1, opportunity for you to bring a summary of your work for the period, and a reminder to those listening just to attend to what others bring, and you'll have an opportunity to feedback on what you've heard in round 2. I might start with you, Simon.
283. Anyone who is in the goodness of innocence is moved by innocence. and is moved by innocence to the extent that she or he is in that good.
Round 1 is an opportunity for members to share a summary of their work with the text over the 2-week period. This summary is known in Logopraxis as a submission, and it includes the number of the paragraph and the chosen piece of text worked with, the spiritual principle implied in the chosen piece of text, the task that was formulated from the principle to give a focus for inner work over the period, and a short offering of what the work revealed for the practitioner in relation to their understanding of the word and how the spiritual principle was illustrated operating in their life.
Reflecting on times when I've been through trials by temptation and the good and the peace that arrives after it all, the delight after, and again appreciating the Lord's, the wonderful love. And again, for that, there was also a release, again, sense of release of judgment towards self from that. So the general overall task was more just observing my conditioned responses I'd had and how much these readings were, the Lord was using these readings to help move some of my conditioned responses, either judgment to other people, against other people, or judgment against myself.
I looked at, lots of passages really, but 270 jumped out where it says, angels of the inmost heaven are such, they never reason about divine truths. Still less do they dispute about any truth, whether it is so or not so. Nor do they know what it is to believe or to have faith. For they say, what is faith? I perceive and see that a thing is so. And my task was to reflect on experiences where I have realised how different life is in the heavenly realm to this physical world. And the very first thing to note when I was trying to write up a submission was that I was really surprised when I'd just finished reading Heaven and Hell, actually, having never read it through before. However, what surprised me was that when we were given this particular paragraph, or these particular paragraphs to work with for this group session, it completely changed the dynamics of what I was doing. I had read all of Heaven and Hell, but to be given a specific task to do and read these paragraphs to actually work with, I really did notice that now I was reading with attention for application, not just for general interest or for information. This difference for me was very noticeable indeed. The two ways of reading the text was very different.
Regardless of whether the life groups are online or face-to-face, there is no cross-talking in round 1. Each participant is invited one at a time to offer their submission. Those listening are asked to focus their attention on hearing what the Spirit of the Lord is saying to the church within them. In other words, we are asked to practice reading the content of what others are bringing in order to hear what the Lord is saying in the same way that we are encouraged to read the text itself.
281 and portion of 283. Good is good so far as it has innocence in it, for the reason that all good is from the Lord, and innocence is a willingness to be led by the Lord.
As listeners in the round, we also try to remain neutral in our bodily and facial expression so that the speaker is given space to become aware of what's arising for them internally as they share. What people hear in round 1 will be what they're invited to share in round 2.
And this is why the conjunction of truth and good is called the heavenly marriage. And the heavenly marriage is heaven. And 283, from all this it is clear that what is man's own, and therefore the love of self, is antagonistic to innocence. For all who are in hell are in what is their own, and therefore in the love of self. My task was to take note of the difference between being led by the Lord as opposed to being led by self. I noticed that inflowing thoughts, affections, and feelings, if not scrutinized by the text, build up ideas of false heavens, and in so doing a lot of angst. It became increasingly obvious over this session how important it is to use the text as the benchmark in considering those inflowing thoughts, affections.
You'll perhaps have noticed by now that personal details related to specific events and people are kept to a minimum, as there is a conscious focus to draw out the universal principles and truths that were seen over the session cycle. The removal of personal details allows group members to more easily connect to what's shared and to see its application in their own life. It also encourages us to impartially observe what is unfolded for us, without judgment, incrimination, or ownership.
I was quite aware of my task this session, and I kept trying to lift my mind from where it naturally settles into worldly natural thought. But I had to keep making an effort to consciously stay more awake. But then I realised that I've seen a pattern working that I've done sort of times before. I see an idea that it's going to be good for my spiritual life, so I make a commitment to try and do it. And then because I want to keep my promise, it gives me the strength to keep going when times are hard.
And I had the experience of that again this cycle, actually. And it was around the idea that I am a wife, that I'm always going to feel myself as a wife when it comes to the relationship in the Word, in relation to the life of the Lord in me, in relation to how I live and breathe and move and express my delights and my sorrows, my valleys and hills and plains and mountains and rivers and gardens and so on and so on.
Okay, so I'll just read the next section of the psalm, and then we can go into round 2. He is the Lord our God. Interspersed between each round is usually a reading of some type of reflective text. Just as with the reading before round 1, the intention is to remind the practitioners of the idea that they are approaching the Lord, and thus to maintain a contemplative, worshipful focus. In this case, the psalm used to open the meeting has been broken up with verses grouped together to be read between the rounds. When they were few in number, indeed very few, and strangers in it. Amen. So let those who have ears to hear what the Spirit is saying to the churches. So round 2 is an opportunity now for you to feed back on what you've heard. The facilitator has just invited the members to share what they heard being said to the church in them as they listened to what others shared in round 1. This act of listening can often be harder than speaking, as there is usually a lot of internal chatter that needs to be set aside to listen attentively in this way. It asks us in the act of listening to hear what the Spirit is saying through what the speaker shares, while simultaneously examining the quality of the thoughts and affections arising in our mind in response to what we're hearing. This ability to hold both the speaker and attend to our mental activity is considered a core spiritual literacy skill in how to be in Logopraxis group life, and is something we develop as we give attention to practicing it when we meet. One aspect of the work in this type of listening is to see and not act on any tendency to compliment, praise, affirm, criticize, or correct what another has said in round 1 when we come to share what we heard in that round in round 2.
Everything is ordered, measured, and can keep us in a state of connection with the Lord if we are willing to work with the text. The Lord speaks the word. Distractions come in many forms as opposition to working. We need to be awake to consciously lift our minds above sensual thoughts, and we need to have a firm resolve and determination to stay awake. We need to love what is of the Lord in each of us.
I heard that judgment of others or myself can be released if I ask the Lord to lead me. The Lord's gift of unconditional love is not just available in the afterlife, but now. I can be in a heavenly state of happiness right here and now. I need to keep relating back to the text to see where my thoughts are coming from. And self is an illusion and delusion that is nothing real. Only the Lord is.
You'll notice that there is an effort to remove references to person, place, time and space in what group members share from what they heard in round 1. The focus in Logopraxis group life is to create a sphere in which the Lord as the Word working in our lives can be more fully appreciated. One way of doing this is to not use any individual's name as the source of what we heard in round 1, but to simply state what we heard. We also try to be mindful of removing personal details from what we share in round 2. Through doing this, we seek to highlight what is more universally applicable through keeping the focus on the spiritual principles expressed through what has been shared, along with any insights into their relevance to the processes involved in Logopraxis work.
Observing conditional responses help us to realize who we really are. We can center ourselves by reflecting on nature and the beauty of it all. And hearing is how the angels regenerate.
I heard that attention and intention open us to wisdom and love. I heard that unconditional love is available now. I heard that false heaven creates angst. I heard that the Lord provides many ways of opening us to heaven's light. I heard that we just need to love each other. I heard that only the Lord knows what is best for us. I heard that the Lord's love is active and present in so many ways.
I heard that innocence is experienced when we feel the Lord's love and support, particularly in hindsight, from times of trials. The text as the Word, as the Lord, offers us truths as a means to see the two selves more clearly, the self and the only self, what is real and what isn't, but what is able to be vivified when it's seen as a gift that allows the real to be known. What is heard as the Lord speaking is then known as the Word.
Yeah, so just a few things that I heard. Reflective work with the text exposes our conditioning and our judgments, and also frees us from them. As you can see, the group experience of Logopraxis allows for variety. In fact, it welcomes it. The individual practice is carried out with a view to sharing one's experience of the Word with others. In meeting together, a sacred space is realized where the Lord can be known by what has been worked into each member through their willingness to engage with the text. In this way, every individual's practice contributes to creating a unique expression of spiritual community and it is this that sustains it. It is the bread which, when broken through being shared with others, opens our hearts so that we might see the Lord in our very midst. That the Word is provided as an objective standard by which we can observe our states, that wisdom is a product of love, and that it's not about the power of intellect, but it is about a genuine love and caring for others. The Word helps us to see the things that are written on the depths of our heart and to place us in a relationship to all things in our life. To be in the Word is to see what is of love and of the Lord in others, in oneself, and in all the conditions and circumstances of life. So that's what I heard. So I'll just read the next section of the psalm and then we can move into round 3. When they went from one nation to another, from one kingdom to another people, he permitted no one to do them wrong. Yes, he rebuked kings for their sake, saying, "Do not touch my anointed ones, and do my prophets no harm." So round 3, just an opportunity now for you to bring anything to the group that you're carrying with regard to the text or Logopraxis itself. So take that opportunity now.
Yeah, there was just so much in all of it, really.
It's like, where do we start?
I know. Mark this, that, the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the passage I read about, the Lord speaks the word and then it comes down through the heavens and into the writing. I loved that. I thought, wow, the Lord speaking to us,
Yeah.
I think one of the things that sort of remains with me, and also from the shares, is about how someone read that statement about angels of the highest heaven being responsive, immediately responsive, and seeing what is within them, seeing the truths within themselves. And it just occurred to me, hearing that again, about how, like in Logopraxis, that's kind of an opportunity to do that. Not necessarily immediately, but certainly when you begin to work with the text, you come to see the text unfolding in your own process. So that was quite, and the reason that is seen that way is because there's a will to do. So where there's a will to implement something, then it can be seen in oneself. The truth can be seen in oneself working. But if it's just an intellectual, relationship with the text as interesting information, then it's not seen like that. And I think that was the difference that was alluded to in the experience of having read the text and then reading a small portion of it again, but with a direct focus on application. It was just it was a lovely illustration of the difference between reading for information versus reading for application.
I mean, I found when I read it as well, wow, I'm seeing so much more in this than when I've read it before,
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I've read it a number of times, but never like that.
No.
The Logopraxis approach seeks to reorientate our relationship to sacred texts by placing the emphasis on reading for application rather than for information. Logo practitioners are encouraged to view the text as descriptive of the structures and processes of consciousness belonging to their own states of mind. So, as we approach the text, we are asked to read with conscious attention to what we are drawn to, rather than attempting to understand the entire set reading. This is an extension on the idea that the text is studying us. As we outwardly read and engage with the text, inwardly we can become aware of the Lord's inflowing life, and so, The text is the point of meeting. It is where we can come into contact with the Lord. It is the means by which what is higher can be reflected back into our lower level of awareness.
I was taken where it also said that angels have no sense of self.
Yeah, so there's a removal. I know it talks about, I'm just trying to find it here, the removal of the love of self. Yeah, so to the degree, and it talks about how, that was really interesting because that talks about a focus externally and a closing up of what is internal. So when love to the Lord and love of the neighbour reign, then things open up internally. And so that's where, you move into limitless degrees of wisdom. It just opens up to eternity. But I got a sense from reading it, I wish I'd marked it up now, but anyway, that it's almost like it's saying that when the love of self reigns, there is a push into externals to make them oneself. It had that kind of idea in it. And of course, what is being touched on here is a key aspect in Logopraxis, which holds that our spiritual well-being is dependent on accepting what truths teach regarding, firstly, who the Lord is, that he is the Word, and secondly, what the proprium or our sense of self is, when the Lord is not acknowledged as the source of our life. So, the setting of a task in Logopraxis is not concerned with achieving the task as an outcome, but is about setting up conditions that remind us to observe a truth or spiritual principle. Through practice, we seek to take what we accept as true intellectually into life so that we can know its truth experientially. The formulation of a Logopraxis task and the effort to implement it in life creates conditions in which something related to the spiritual life, that is, the life of our mind, its thoughts and affections, can be seen. The purpose of the task, then, is observation. It enables us to see what we are given to see in the effort to work with a principle or truth, and in what resists this. The seeing of the proprium, or the sense of self that believes it exists without the Lord, becomes a gift, because once this hellish proprium is seen, there can be an effort to step back from identifying with it as ourself. To see, to really see, the hellish proprium for what it truly is, means that the Word is working to free us from our identification with the hell that it is. One of Logopraxis's aphorisms is that the freeing is in the seeing.
We try to make the proprium what it isn't, and that's how we start off, isn't it?
We're going to fix it.
And we do that all the time. We aren't immune from
we're always
saying
that.
We're going to be better. We're not going to do that anymore.
But one of the things is, when you see that, we're not at the end of the process. We're in process. So is everybody else, and that changes our relationship to them. That's where the compassion, empathy, mercy, that's where it comes from, because that's what, that's what the Lord has towards the whole of the human race. I mean, all he's asking us to do is, emulate that a bit. So, but again, unless you see, unless you apply these things to yourself, then the capacity for that is pretty limited.
And there has to be that love driving it, that willingness to actually read for application, knowing what you're going to find when you do that.
Yeah.
It won't be pretty.
I kept reading angels as messengers in this.
I read them as truths.
Or truths, like removing. Yeah. It's like remove. I was just thinking it's a lot harder to apply it to yourself when you're reading it as those people, other people.
Yeah.
And even angels, you're reading it as angels in heaven as opposed to truths or messengers or whatever of, when it talks about the different heavens, they're all different states of good and truth, different levels of good and truth in application in our mind.
Yeah. I tried to read it as higher or deeper truths.
It's more acknowledgement of the Lord, basically. It's more innocence.
Rather than people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what that says is, because it talks about how, so if you take the term, like angels within have innocence, right? So all genuine truth has at its core innocence, or what is good. So that's how you know whether something is true or not. In the work of Logopraxis, we operate from a principle that all revelation is given to teach us about what exists within ourselves. Revelation is not given to give us information about others. This means that everything in the text is relevant. If we can't see the relevance, we have work to do in order to discover how what is described finds its expression in our life. The spiritual world doesn't exist outside the human mind. In fact, it is the human mind. Everything described in the heavenly doctrines applies to the life of our mind. And we are told that in order to think spiritually, all ideas of time, space, person, and matter have to be removed from our thinking. What you just heard was an example of the practitioners working to do this, to see how an angel living in a place called heaven can be read as a state of truth or innocence in our experience with the Word.
I was a little bit interested in this aspect of how you were talking about before, how angels don't see things, rather they hear things, right? So
yeah.
And
yeah.
It was the highest angel.
Obedience.
And so it said for us not to take on things that we hear, and yet from others, and yet it says not like the angels do hear, and yet it's sort of contradictory to say not to take from others truths that you hear.
Yeah, but the angels take it from the Lord, don't they?
Yeah, not from others.
Well, anyhow,
it was about hearing it in the sensual.
I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at it.
It was about hearing the sensual.
Yeah.
But the other distinction to make is that that's just the celestial angels. The spiritual angels see, because they're involved in. Well, they're the preachers, aren't they? They are the ones that see and understand. They work more from the understanding.
Mm.
Yeah, that number, Len, is about perceiving truth and good immediately. So it's a felt, it's a felt perception that is certain. That's how they function. Whereas the other kind of hearing is just lining up all your ducks in a row so that you've got a good argument, and it's sort of an intellectual exercise, to defend a position.
Yeah, and it kind of sounded like they were talking about the ignorance of innocence and that kind of hearing. Like you hear something, and because it's in the Word, we go, well, it must be true.
Yeah.
As opposed to going, yes, I know that to be true.
Don't put any rational to it or any experience.
Yeah, and again, this comes back to the whole purpose of Logopraxis work, is to get a direct experience of something. That increases your sensitivity and perception to things, and it's not something you've taken on from another. It's something that you've seen in your own experience of working with the Word. So, yeah. Logopraxis offers us a way into the Word that directly supports our regeneration in the here and now. The approach takes us through a process where we come to experience the truth of what the Word teaches. If we engage with the Word with the intention of allowing it to speak into our life to direct our daily practice, then the Word will reach out to us with what's required. The insights that come through the intentional practice of the text then become the doctrine for our life. This is a saving faith. It is something very personal, having been tailored to bringing into being the unique form of mind or use we are created to be. Experiencing the Word working in our life in this way leads to a radical transformation in our sense of the Lord. We find that as our trust in the Word grows through practice, we come to see it more and more as the Lord. We move from seeking knowledge about the Lord from the Word to knowing Him as the Word.